Sir, could you tell me how many stairs there are?
There's 4 and then a small stair at the top.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Now the small one.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Oh, so you thought I was disabled, huh? Did you feel sorry for me? Did you say, oh? Did you wonder? I bet you did. As a professional whose life work has been the education and care of those who are perceived as disabled, I often wonder who's disabling who. Allow me to be very honest when I tell you this is new ground for me. And as I told some of the people here, I'm usually behind the stage working because I'm usually a background person and I do that well. But today I have thrust myself to the front. And I think it's kind of odd because basically every day I stand up in front of my students and I give a mini TED Talk. But it's different to me because they think I know what I know. So today, just for a little minute, let me think of you guys as a little younger. I realized that this talk could have been approached from many different paths because there are many different ways to disable someone. You can disable their minds, you can disable their dreams, or you can spoil them so much you just disable them in life. And those are just a few ways. But those are not my area. But what I want to talk about is. And so you walk into the room and it's easy to spot them over there. Look over there. It's the person in the wheelchair or the adult or child with a noticeable disability. And you either out loud or to yourself say it with me, ah. You immediately feel sorry for them. You think how hard life must be for them, all the trouble they must have in life. You think of all the things they can't do. But have you ever wondered what they can do? What are some physical attributes about you that are most noticeable? Would you like everyone to judge you by that? Oh, that's the red-headed girl. That's the Down syndrome boy, or the man with the strange-looking eyes. The first thing you see, disability. But they are not a disability first. Like I am not a woman who stutters sometimes. But that doesn't define me. Who's disabling who? Let me help give your mind a picture by giving you some stats. 26% of adults in America have some type of disability. And that's not hard to figure out in here because that's 1 in 4. So if you look around, at least 2 of us would have a disability in this room. And let me break that down for you. 13.7% have some kind of serious disability walking or climbing the stairs. 10.8% have cognition disability with serious difficulty concentrating, remembering, and making decisions. 6.8% have an independent living disability with difficulty doing errands alone. 5.9% are deaf or have serious difficulty hearing. 4.6% with blindness or serious difficulty seeing. And 3.6% of people with a disability have a self-care disability. And you know what? It's highest in the South. And look where we are. And those are some stats from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So, based on those stats, each one of us is bound to interact with someone who is disabled every day, multiple times a day. And the facts are that all disabilities are not able to be seen, but that's a talk for another day. This journey started for me at a group home. And I really didn't know what to expect. But after the first night, I knew I really couldn't do that. And I even told my family, I'm not built for this. However, we were in need of money, and so there I was the next day at the group home. As the days went by, I learned to see beyond what my eyes took in, and I realized you can't trust what you see. Take Bobby, for instance, an older gentleman in my first group home with an intellectual disability who could only write his first name. I recall feeling so sorry for him, thinking how sad it was that no one took the time to patiently teach Bobby how to count or how to cook. So I set out to teach him. Or Tom, disabled later in life from a freak accident of him falling in the pool, ending up with traumatic brain injury. Everything in his life started off normal. He even had a son. But he could only use one side of his body. He couldn't talk, not really. I remember rushing to Tom's rescue anytime he needed to move. After all, that was my job. It was there that I learned the fine art of disabling. I learned how to make people helpless, never giving them a chance to do for themselves or letting them have a bit of pride or even attempt to increase. After all, it was my job. Or Mark, blind, autistic, trying constantly to find his way to the chair in the living room. It was easier to take him by the hand and lead him there rather than let him bump into the walls. I could tell you story after story about my group home residents, but let's fast forward to my life as a special educator. Let me share with you some school-related stats. Between 2011 and 2012, and 2017 to 2018, the number of students served increased from 6.4 million to 7.0 million, and the percentage served increased from 13% of total public school enrollment to 14%. And let me break that down for you. We got 34% with a specific learning disability, 19% with a speech or language impairment, 14% with other health impairment, 10% with autism, 7% with a developmental delay, emotional disturbance, 5%, multiple disabilities, 2%, hearing impairment, 1%, and an orthopedic impairment, 1%. And so we're serving students from age 3 to 21 under the Individuals with Disabilities Act. Imagine my surprise when I realized the same issue exists. For the last 15 years, I've been a special ed teacher. I've worked with many disabilities in many combinations, including emotional and behavior disorders. I joke and I tell my general ed coworkers that I get papers on my students, and I do. Those papers tell me everything that my students can't do, what they need help with, and how I can assist them. When I talk to fellow teachers, coworkers, parents, guardians, they recite to me the worst of these students, the can'ts and the won'ts. So let's talk about Lollipop. Autistic, nonverbal, she couldn't talk, she could barely write, and she had some very odd eating habits. Or the Princess, limited verbal interactions and a storm when she gets mad. Or Anthony, he can't use the restroom, he doesn't do any work, he tears up the room, he doesn't know how to behave. You may ask, how might you go about making a person disabled? Well, the answer is by running to their rescue excessively, by talking to them like they're a baby, by doing things for them they can do for themselves, covering for them all the time, speaking for them, making excuses, not letting them make choices, and not pushing them to do or learn more. And you know what? I was part of the problem. And so I thought to myself, what can I do to change this? So I went back to school and became a special educator because I realized that there may not be much that I could do for those gentlemen, but I could make a change with the younger kids. You see, back then I didn't see anything amazing, but now that's all I see. I see the amazing things they can do and the excellent people that they are. Let's talk about Tom again. Tom was the best company ever. And I say that because I'm originally a New Yorker. And so Tom and I used to drive our 20 minutes up to Niagara Falls, and we would sit there and keep each other company. Now, we all know there are people who cannot keep good company. But Tom was the best company. He would look at stuff and laugh and pat me on the leg, and he was the best company. An amazing thing about Tom. Or what about Bob? He could only write his first name, but I'm telling you right now, if you spilled something on the floor, Bob could clean up any mess there was. Or let me tell you about Lollipop. She may not have been able to talk, and she might have had some very interesting eating habits. But if I set a box of a puzzle with 200 pieces or more, she could go in the puzzle and get out the first piece. And she would look through the puzzle, and she would get out the second piece. And she would look through the puzzle, and she would get out the third piece. I don't know if any of you can do that, but she could put all 200 pieces together in order without ever taking the puzzle out of the box. Or let's talk about the princess. I remember her fondly because she used to like to play a game on my Promethean board. And she would intentionally make the food wrong for the people because she laughed at them. But what was most amazing about her and her limited verbal interactions is one day I was sitting at my desk, and she never used to talk in sentences. But this particular day, she says, "The girl." And she kept saying it to me. She kept looking, "The girl." And so I said, "What about the girl?" And she said, "The girl's hair is blue." That was the first time that she had spoken into a sentence. But when she played the game, that is how I spoke to her. "Hey, princess, the girl's hair is blue." And she finally repeated back to me. And I was so proud. It was like she was my own child. And let's talk about Ever. With the ability to remember where everything belonged in the room. And he would see to it that everything was moved back, even if I didn't want him to. Or Toby, who could tell you what day you were born on if you just told him your birthday. And he could add numbers far beyond what was considered normal. My theory, it is us who are considered normal, who are really the cripplers, the disablers, the teachers who say these students or people can't, the parents who put limits on what they can do and achieve. I've had more than one set of parents give me a grocery list of what their students can't do, only for me to prove them wrong. Just recently, a student came to me supposedly unable to do anything. What a surprise when I met with his family and they found out that he could put his clothes on, he could talk, and he could understand because, in fact, he understood 2 languages because at school I spoke English and at his house they spoke Spanish. So he can do something. I don't see what they can't do. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what they can do because they can do. And one thing they can do no matter what their level is curse at me with the right word. And I don't know how that happens, but they always get it right. They can do a lot more than we expect, more than we let them. Inside, they have so much more than meets the eye. The facts are, they can't read, they can't talk, they can't write, they can't walk. Their cognitive ability is not normal. Yes, they are disabled. But disabled doesn't mean that you can't do. Am I saying that you should never help a person who's disabled? Not at all, because we all need help sometimes. I'm saying don't be the reason they can't help themselves. Remember those attributes I asked about at the beginning? They all make us kind of disabled, huh? What if you were treated the way you treat a visibly disabled person. My stuttering makes me a special ed student as well. And if my mom had followed the advice of my sister, get her some help, or put her in a different class, then I may not have known how brilliant I am. After all, in the 5th grade, I was reading on the 10th grade level. Thank goodness my mother saw past that. She didn't buy into it. She didn't buy into the she can't do hype. And while I don't count myself as a public speaker, here I am today, partially because of my mother's belief in me and the fact that I believe that she believed in me. My students believe, I believe they can do anything. And that's what makes them achieve so much. I don't disable my students or any person I see. And when I see them, I smile and I think to myself, what's the brilliant thing about them? What can they do? And I'm not sorry when I see them, but I'm in awe because I know there is something awesome about them. You remember those numbers, 1 and 4? Think about the last time you were in contact with someone disabled, a family member, a coworker, a student. What was your interaction like? What thoughts were in your mind? Have you been disabled by someone? Are you disabling people? Who's disabling who? Thank you.